So welcome, my name's Jim, one of the mental health therapists here. And those of you who know me or have been to my groups know that I like to start out lightly. I don't like to take things too seriously. So I did some research to find some videos on relationships. This first video is, I describe it as explaining how men think. So this is for women, explaining how men think. And I think it's pretty helpful.
Babe, did you say you were going to make dinner? I couldn't remember. What?
I just wish you'd take some initiative and cook your own dinner for once. I've been at work too, you know, and now I get to come home and pack the dishwasher and then unpack the dishwasher and cook dinner and put the washing on, and you know what, I can't...
Hey, relax. It's going to be all right.
How?
Here, I'll just show you. Okay, I've been doing this since we moved in. See this basket thing? I don't know how it happens, if it's the house or what, but any dirty clothes you put in this basket, somehow the next day they're just clean, folded, and in a perfect pile on your bed.
You're not serious.
I couldn't believe it at first either, but it just keeps happening. That's why I didn't tell you. I didn't want to jinx it.
You are insane.
Try it, you'll see. Unless it's only chosen me. See, I don't know.
I can't do this.
No, wait. There's other things too. Plates, cutlery, pizza boxes, dirty tissues, anything you leave on this coffee table just vanishes overnight. I mean, sometimes I'll see how far I can push this thing and I'll just leave shit everywhere. And then sure enough, the next day, it's all gone. It's just vanished. It's magic. No, she wouldn't have left me. This is what I think happened. I heard her get up in the middle of the night to get a drink or something. She must have fallen onto the magic coffee table and just vanished.
Are you insane?
No, he's not insane. I've got the same coffee table at home.
See? Some people aren't smiling.
I want that coffee table.
I want that laundry basket.
I think I'll keep my thoughts to myself.
Yeah, it's safer that way. So, in fairness, this video is more about,
I'm insane.
this is more for men about women.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's gonna stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever gonna stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like, there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you.
Ow!
Oh, come on. Ow. If you would just...
Don't.
Try to see things my way. Do I have to keep on talking till I can go?
So, now that we're educated a little bit about how relationships work, let's talk about communication in general and then how communication works in a relationship. When I was in high school geometry, the teacher started out the first day talking about geometry is based on axioms. That there are these core axioms in geometry. She says, we're not going to prove them, you just have to accept them as fact. The only one I still remember is two parallel lines will never intersect. Two parallel lines, if they're perfectly parallel, will go on for infinity, never crossing. And that was just a core principle. And a lot of geometry is based on that principle. In relationships, I've come up with about 6 axioms. And I have all 6 in the handout that I'm going to give you at the end. But I want to focus on 3 of them. Primarily, the fact that every behavior springs from a need. And when I say every behavior, I mean literally. Scratching your nose, going on a date, getting married, climbing Mount Everest, jumping off a bridge with a bungee cable. Every single behavior that a human being does has underneath it a need. Because all people are trying to do is be content, be happy in life. And we're happiest when our needs are met. So it becomes imperative, if you want to be happy, to begin to understand this concept of needs. Now the second principle is needs are universal. We all have the same needs. And that's really helpful in the relationship element, because if you understand that everybody has the same needs, just not at the same time, you can begin to think about why a person is doing what they're doing. I do a couple of high-tech visuals in this group. This is the first one. I have a need for chocolate. And if chocolate's not available, I can get irritable, I can get grumpy. Now, is chocolate a need?
Yeah. Depends on your thoughts.
It doesn't. Chocolate has need has a very specific definition. What's the definition? It's universal. So is chocolate a need? No. Why? Are you getting it? Why is chocolate not a need?
Because everybody doesn't need chocolate.
Because there are people that don't like chocolate. Really simple, right? Now, the good news is we're working on a medication for these people because we know there's something wrong with them. They don't like chocolate, right?
Weird.
But in the meantime, now here's a fun thing. I know that chocolate's not a need, so I want to know why I crave chocolate. So I trace down and I discover the need is comfort. I use chocolate to get my need for comfort met. Now notice what happens with my hand. Here, if I don't have chocolate, I'm suffering. But if I discover that it's about comfort and chocolate's not available, maybe I can use frozen yogurt or ice cream or popcorn or a long walk or a hot bath. So one of the beauties of understanding needs is that your choices open up. Does that make sense? So in addictions, when I was working in the addictions field, I wasn't interested in the alcoholism or the use of pot or even the use of cigarettes, because that was just a behavior. What I wanted to find out is what the need was underneath it, that they were using that substance as a Band-Aid, as a fix for, just like I was using chocolate as a fix for comfort. So this is a kind of a fun thing to begin to understand. What are the underlying needs? So let's just think about this for a little bit. What do you think some needs, core needs are that every human being has? What's that? It's food. Yeah, there's actually a group of about 5 survival needs. Air, clothing, shelter, food, water. We all need those. Interestingly, without those, yeah, you're going to die. But all of the other 35 on the list, you won't die if you don't have them. You just won't be happy. So what are some other needs, do you think? Would you think that honesty in your relationship is a need? Odd. Yeah, okay, what other things come to mind? Maybe even love. That's a need, isn't it? Every human being has a need for love. Okay. What else?
Compassion.
Compassion. By the way, if we write something on the board here and you've never had the desire or the need for it, let me know, because then it wouldn't meet our definition. Truth. Okay.
Does that fall under trust? Trust, is that the
Trust,
same thing?
I would put trust up there. You can trust a person's behavior.
Okay. Respect.
Respect, I think so. And then we've got needs like space, alone time, right? Everybody needs a little space. And then we've got one on safety. We want to feel safe. The interesting thing about safety is it's complex. You can have physical safety, you can have emotional safety, you can have financial safety and security, and you can even have spiritual safety. The guy who taught me this, Marshall Rosenberg, would go to Israel, and he would get a group of Palestinians and Israelis in the same room. He was told he was crazy because they're at war and there's going to be chaos. But his belief was that if you could identify the common needs, the universal needs, you could start a conversation. And what he found was that they all agreed on physical safety for themselves and their families and spiritual safety, respect for their religion. They were all in agreement. And then they started a problem-solving conversation that went on for hours, talking about how they could create that sense of safety. Kind of cool stuff. And that's really the essence of this talk, is how do we create connection in our relationships? And we do that by identifying the common needs, understanding what the needs of each person in their relationship is. So I have a list of 40. I'm happy to, that'll be in the handout today. So if you remember, I said that going after our needs did what? What was the reason why we're going after our needs? What were we actually seeking for?
Happiness?
Happiness, right. We wanted to feel happy. So, to flip that on its head, if you're not happy, what's the problem?
Your needs aren't met.
There's a need that's not being met. Yeah, beautiful. Now here's the kind of the fascinating question. Whose job is that? Your own. Your own, yes. Not your partner's, or your kids, or your parents, your teachers, your boss. It's not their job to meet your needs. Why is that?
And you're given control.
Well, that might be true, but go ahead.
Wouldn't companionship also be on the list?
It is. So the reason is because everybody is focused on their needs. If your boss, if your partner is focused on their needs, it's no wonder that they don't have time and energy to focus on your needs. Now there's an exception to this, and that's the beauty of this. I believe that one of our core human needs is the needs of others. And in that I mean the people that we care about. I love helping my wife get her needs met. It's one of my needs, to support her. And helping my kids get their needs met. Again, my grandkids even. It feels good. It meets a need of mine to be supportive of people I love and care about. Heck, I even love helping my dog get her needs met. I don't really want to get up at 2 a.m. and let the dog out, but I know that she could be suffering, and so I don't resent it. I get up and I do it because it feels good to help others. Now, therein lies a kind of a trap. And this is kind of a subtle part of relationships that becomes really exciting as we understand it. And I like to apologize in advance because I'm going to start swearing. What I've discovered is that if you emotionally involve people in learning, the learning sticks. So by swearing, what I've discovered is an emotion is evoked. But I do like to apologize in advance in case anybody gets offended. And then I'm really going to get into it. This one even sounds smelly. Duty. Now, I honestly believe that those are more vile, those are much more evil swear words than the typical 4-letter words that people are using to get your attention. Because these fall under a category that I call demands. And people struggle with understanding the concept of demand. So, an example. I worked 10 hours today, so you should have dinner ready for me when I get home. You've probably heard something like that in your life. So, dinner is whose need? Mine, right? And what am I suggesting? Somebody else has to meet my needs. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm going to guess, because this has been my experience with everybody that I've talked to, is that there's only two responses. This is my second high-tech visual, by the way. There's only two responses when you tell someone they have to do something.
Yes or no?
No, not exactly. One is they do it, but they resent it. They'll do it, but they'll do it grudgingly. The second one is they rebel. I told you, high-tech visuals. We're a class act here. Resent or rebel, that's the only way people respond to a demand. I bet nobody that you know has ever said something to you like, you have to get this done, and you said, oh, I have to? Thank you. What an honor. No. Almost invariably, if you're told you have to do something, you know the posture, that resentment kind of, oh, fine. An example. I had a chain link fence in the backyard, and for my dog, and my dog died, so I took the chain links all apart, put them in a box, and all the brackets, and then there are these 10 posts in the ground, 6-foot aluminum posts. So I rock the post and lift it out of the ground, and it's got a 2-foot block of cement on the bottom of the post. What do? Let's see, I could hacksaw off the cement, but then it's not illegal. I mean, it's a shortened, it's only 4 foot, useless for fencing. Okay, well I could chip, no way I'm gonna take 10 blocks and chip all the cement. So what I did was I laid them on the ground in a nice neat row across the backyard. And I left them there for 4 months.
Oh.
You know, typical American male, when in doubt, don't. So one Saturday morning, my wife gets really upset and she says, move the damn posts. We can't mow the yard, we can't entertain guests. If the meter reader checking the electricity walked around the corner and tripped, we'd get sued. It's an eyesore, move them. So she had a need for aesthetics, beauty, and safety, and use of the yard, functionality. I have the same needs. The problem was I didn't have them at 9 a.m. on Saturday morning when she was asking for it. At 9 a.m. Saturday morning, I want to just kick back. I've been going to work for 5 days, getting up at 6:30, being at work at 8. So Saturday morning is my time to make a pot of tea and watch golf on television and just kick back. But what I heard in my head was, you have to. It's your duty. So I went out and did it, right? Grabbed that first post, drug it across the yard, down the steps, over to the garage, and threw it in the corner. And I turn around, and there's a scratch on the sidewalk where I drug that block of cement. The scratch went all the way back to the stairs. The stairs were 4 cement steps going up to the upper yard. The third step down, I broke a chunk of cement, about that big, out of the step. Now I haven't a clue on how to fix a cement step, so I know I'm in trouble. And then I walk back into the yard, and there's a groove, a valley, all the way across the grass where I drug that block of cement. That's the resentful way of doing things. In psychology, we have a name for this. It's called passive-aggressive behavior. And the interesting thing about passive-aggressive behavior is it's not conscious. I wasn't consciously trying to make my wife mad. I'm smarter than that. I was just doing it with a pout. I was just doing it resentfully. And it caused all kinds of chaos. The interesting thing about this is that if I would have stopped and thought about it, okay, what are the needs going on right now for me? What are my wife's needs? I could have gone to my wife and said, look, honey, it's Saturday morning, 9 a.m. What I want to do right now is I want to just kick back, watch some golf. drink my tea, keep my feet up, eat a bag of potato chips, whatever. How about if I do it this afternoon? She would have been fine. She'd been waiting 4 months. She could have easily waited 4 hours. But I just didn't think of it. I actually should on myself by not connecting with my needs. And it caused all kinds of chaos. So it's a wonderful thing to begin to think in terms of what are the needs of the moment. Because I honestly believe we never give up a need, we just negotiate the timing of the need. We never give up on a need, we just negotiate the timing. So she had a need for safety and attractiveness and the use of the arts. I had the same need, I didn't have it at 9 a.m. So it would be negotiating that I do it in the afternoon. In fact, if I would have said, why don't we do it together this afternoon? We could kind of make fun of it and make it as a project. She would have loved that because she also has a need to do things together. She loves it when we work on a project together. Everybody could have been happy. Instead, because I wasn't listening, nobody was happy. Kind of fascinating to begin to discover that the world has been operating this way all of our lives, but nobody's been teaching us about it. A 15-year-old boy robs a liquor store at gunpoint. That's the boy's behavior. What's his need?
Money or whatever he's stealing?
Well,
Attention?
you see, it can't be he can't be, I said a liquor store, so it can't be
Oh,
that, because
okay.
alcohol is not a
Real?
universal need.
Oh, okay.
The rush.
Attention.
It could be the, excitement, but yeah, I like actually attention or peer acceptance. He wants to be seen as cool by his peers, by his gang, by his clique. He wants some recognition or acceptance. That's a really common, particularly at 15 years of age. The possibility is too that he's doing it to get money in order to buy food. Does that make sense? So it's interesting, money isn't really a need. I think most of us, if we had a sugar daddy or a sugar mama, that we wouldn't care about money, as long as we were getting fed and housed and all that. So really, money is a behavior to get our needs for comfort and safety and security and food and that. Does that make sense? So yeah, that's a possibility. Then I was giving a lecture at a high school, and I'm standing there with the teacher, kids are coming in, and in walks a boy wearing a gray fedora hat. And the teacher doesn't like it. The teacher scolds the boy for wearing a hat in the classroom. And the boy gets defensive, and they get into a clash, into a power struggle. And it's really uncomfortable, because they're kind of yelling at each other. But as we analyze that, the teacher is scolding the boy for wearing a hat. That's his behavior. What's the teacher's need?
Respect.
Right, and I think I have respect up here, yeah. Some people say control, but it turns out, as I survey people, not everybody believes they have a need for control. In fact, most of us, or some of us, realize we have very little control. No control over other people, and not even control over our own thoughts and emotions. So what I came to as I thought about this was, control seems to be a behavior. Control is an action, a behavior, when you don't feel safe. So the teacher might not have been feeling safe about allowing the boy to wear a hat because it would start to create chaos in the classroom. Other boys start wearing hats. In comes Hafiz wearing a fez, and then Raul coming in wearing a big sombrero with dangly balls, and it starts to get really crazy. What would be a French name? I was trying to think of someone wearing a chapeau, beret, yeah. So, yeah, I think respect for the rules. Why do we create rules? Nobody needs a black box hanging in the sky that's got red and yellow and green lights. That's not a need. But we have them everywhere. What's the purpose of the box? Yeah, safety. Safety on the highways, exactly. So that people are taking turns on the road. Turns out that everything that you see, all these actions, all these things that we create, all revolve around getting needs met. So this actually becomes kind of fascinating. What comes up is curiosity. Anytime you see someone doing something you don't like, particularly even if it's to you, Another person's behavior is never about you. What's it about?
Their
Their needs.
Their needs, exactly. And sometimes, when their needs are really up, they don't much pay attention or care about your needs. If you're at home and the school calls and says that your baby fell on the swing set and is on the way to the hospital with a broken arm, you're going to get in the car and you're going to drive like crazy to get to the hospital, and you don't much care about stop signs and red lights and rules. When our needs are up, we kind of put blinders on and we just go for it. I've actually taken this a little bit further, so if I see someone weaving or swerving in traffic, I got to wondering, what could their need be? And I came up with several. One is the McDonald's dance. I remember when a woman sued McDonald's because the coffee was too hot. And then I remembered spilling coffee in my lap when I was driving. I don't know if you've ever done that, but when I got hot coffee in my lap, I started holding my pant legs away from my skin because it's really scalding. But if I'm holding my pant legs, I'm not holding the wheel. It's out of control, and the likelihood of its drifting increases. Another one is the bee maneuver. You're deathly allergic to bees, right? So there's one in the back, and you get your newspaper and you lean over the seat, rolling down the window, trying to shoo the bee out of the car as your car drifts across 3 lanes of traffic. Again, survival, you're interested in your survival, you don't much think about other people's needs. It's kind of interesting to begin to wonder what that person's need was. You see someone speeding down the highway, there's a funny little thing that they say that if someone is driving slower than you, they're stupid. And if they're driving faster than you, they're an idiot. And it doesn't matter what speed you're going. It's just always, if they're not doing your speed, then there's something wrong with them. And so I got to thinking, why would a person be driving fast? Well, it's not because they're an idiot. It's because they have some need. Maybe they've been late to work 3 times this month, and they were told if they're late to work again, they're going to get fired. So they're trying to get to work before the clock goes off. That's a need for them at the time. Now the interesting thing is that I'm not justifying behavior. The boy robbing the liquor store, that's not okay. But his need, on pure acceptance, completely normal, because we all have it. The teacher scolding the boy, I'm not necessarily okay with the teacher's behavior, but his need for safety in the classroom, I'm completely on board. So I will always defend the need, but not always defend the behavior. By the way, how about that boy wearing a hat, the gray fedora hat in the classroom? That was his behavior. What was his need? Yes, the word that I use is autonomy, individuality. He wants to be seen as cool. Nobody else in the school is wearing a gray fedora hat, and he is, and so he's a little different. He's a little cool. We've probably all been there and bought a car or a purse or a t-shirt or something that was really, that you want to stand out and be different. It's human nature. Okay, so a little bit of true confessions now. When I was in high school, all my friends were smoking cigarettes. So I started smoking a pipe. I was the only kid in my high school smoking a pipe. That's autonomy, right? Well, I'm also a Leo, so I had 2 pipes. I had a Sherlock Holmes pipe that was kind of an S-shaped pipe with a leather wrap around the handle, and then I had an English Country Squire pipe. Little tiny bowl and a foot-long stem. I remember when I put the bowl in my pocket, the stem would arch over my shoulder. That's some serious autonomy needs, right? I got some attention.
Not all of it positive.
Not all of it positive, right? But that's part of the fun.
Boys will be boys.
Does it make sense? And every human being, that 4-year-old standing in front of you, you're trying to get your daughter to go to bed and at a reasonable hour, and she's saying, you're not the boss of me. It's not about rebellion, and it's not about being confrontive. It's about having a sense of autonomy, independence. And if you understand that, you can say to the 4-year-old, honey, you can't stay up till midnight just because your older brother stays up till midnight. I don't feel safe. But I tell you what, because I know it's important that you want a sense. And you might not even say it to a 4-year-old, but you say, tell you what, darling, tomorrow morning you get to choose what you're going to wear, what socks you're going to wear, what dress you're going to wear. To daycare, you get to choose what you want to have for lunch, and I'll make whatever you say. If you want to have banana nut muffins, or if you want to have peanut butter and jelly, or if you want to have pizza, you tell me. You're in charge of what's for lunch and what you're going to wear. I've given her some autonomy, some sense of power in her life, some sense of self-direction. That teenage boy wearing the hat, all the teacher would have had to do when he walked in and says, wow, that's a cool hat. And you look really good in it. That's a really styling hat. Validate, validate, validate. Acknowledge in front of the whole class how cool he looks. And he's gotten his autonomy needs met. And then talk about your needs. I love the hat, and I would really like to request that you take it off while you're in the classroom, because we kind of have a rule, and it revolves around respect for the classroom and not creating chaos by having a lot of different kinds of hats coming in. So would you be willing to take it off? You know, but it's a really nice hat. So put it over there by the door, hang on the pencil sharpener where you won't forget it when you leave. So again, validating his needs and also expressing your needs. The chance of an argument would have dropped dramatically if we just begin to validate people's needs and realize that it's not about me. The teacher could have probably took it kind of personally and felt like it was an affront to his control over the classroom, his management of the classroom, when it had nothing to do with the teacher. It had everything to do with the kid wanting to be cool. Make sense? So what happens is we begin to think in terms of other than ourselves and begin to get curious about why people do what they do. So let me give you a classic example. This is a little behavior between me and a friend. I always like to apologize, particularly to the people who are at Brookside, because we do creative expressions groups. We do art groups, and sometimes people say, well, I'm not a very good artist. And our motto is, nobody's a good artist. It's not about being graded or being perfect. It's about just expressing yourself. So I always kind of apologize because I've gotten really good at doing this particular illustration, but it also has been over the course of 8 years that I've been doing it. So don't take it personally if you're impressed, because that's me, by the way. And that's my behavior out in the world. Now I know you're getting impressed right now, but like I say, 8 years, you really master it. What's the foundation of all my behavior out in the world?
Your needs.
My needs, exactly. Now here's an interesting thing. I recognize that I have a need, and I do a behavior. That doesn't mean it's going to work. There's a chance that I do the behavior and it meets my needs. There's also the possibility that that particular behavior didn't work. My need wasn't met. How do I know if my need is being met? Turns out we have an internal mechanism, a built-in loop called feelings. It lets you know if your needs are being met. Now, in our community meeting we do twice a day, we have a list of 100 feeling words. By the way, in the handout, you get that list of 100 words to take home with you. But that's much too complicated. There's a little test you can give yourself called the why test. So anytime you're doing a behavior, in order to check and see if your needs are being met, you give yourself the why test. And it looks like this. The why test. If your needs are being met, you feel yummy. If your needs are not being met, you feel yucky. Pretty simple. Pretty simple. If you're having a yucky feeling, what's going on?
You're not getting what you need.
There's a need that's not being met, right? Now, whose job is that again? Yours, exactly. Stop blaming other people for your feelings. It's not their job. They're busy taking care of their own feelings and needs. Your feelings are your job. Now, if someone in your life wants to help you, beautiful. But the minute you insist on it, you run the risk of damaging, of making the relationship toxic. Okay, so I'm going to call out my friend Steve. That's Steve. That's his behavior out in the world. What's the basis of everything Steve is doing?
His needs.
His needs. He's got the same feedback loop called feelings. So I call Steve up and I say, dude, let's go to the movie tonight. It's Saturday night and I want to go see this new movie that's out. And he says, no, and hangs up the phone. Wow. What happens when your best friend hangs up on you? You could feel hurt. You could feel angry, confused, frustrated, sad. Any number of emotions could come up. And what triggered those emotions? Steve's behavior, right? Steve's behavior triggered my upset. So I call this a behavioral storm because I'm reacting emotionally to something Steve did. I might even be so upset that I call him back. That's lightning coming out of my storm. I told you it was going to be impressive. Now, how does Steve respond to my loving phone call? Or I tell him off. Not well, right? He has a behavior storm. And he lashes out at me. And that is the essence of every argument you've ever been in. Every war, every argument. I don't like what you're doing, and I tell you about it. You don't like what I'm doing, and you tell me about it, and we're at war. And interestingly, nobody is talking about feelings and needs, which is the core of every behavior. That is up until now. Once you get this, you realize Steve's behavior is not about me. What's it about?
His needs.
His needs, exactly. So what happens for me is I become really curious. Now in the model that I'm talking about here, this comes from the work of a guy named Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. It's called NonViolent Communication. And he actually made up a little communication model called Offner to be able to communicate with a person. So I'm going to use this model to figure out what the heck's going on with Steve. And I start out by observing what just happened. So I call Steve up and I say, dude, I called you up, I asked you to go to the movie, you said no, and then there was a click, and you weren't there anymore. Now that sounds fairly reasonable, fairly normal, but interestingly, it's not how we typically do it. How we typically do it looks more like this. I called you up in a good mood and you got in my face and yelled at me and hung up on me. The problem is we don't know some of that data. First of all, so the alternative to what we're trained to do is called an evaluation. We don't know that Steve was yelling. It sounded like yelling to us, but he might not think of it that he was yelling. And he'll argue. He might not have hung up on us. He might have been on a cell phone and gone through a dead zone and just lost a signal. And if we tell him he hung up on us, he gets mad at us again. So we avoid evaluations and just relay the facts, the unarguable facts, because we want to connect with Steve, not have a fight. So just what I heard and what I saw. I asked you to go to a movie. You said no, and then there was silence. Those are facts. Nothing you can argue with. And then I say, ouch. I felt hurt, disappointed, frustrated, even angry. Feelings inside of me that I'm having. But we're not really trained to do that. What we're trained to do is tell the other person our thoughts. For example, I felt rejected. Isn't a feeling. It's a thought. Where's the action in rejection? It's the other person. I'm not rejecting. He's doing something that I'm calling rejection. So that's a thought, and he could get defensive and say, I'm not rejecting you. When I think he's rejecting me, I might feel hurt or disappointed or scared or angry. But if I say you're rejecting me, now I'm actually accusing him of something. You're betraying me. Again, that's not a feeling. I feel betrayed. It's not. Somebody else is doing the action, the betraying. So when I think someone's betraying me, I feel angry or hurt or scared. Feelings are inside us. And those others are thoughts that someone else is doing. And so betrayal, denial, abuse, all of those things are actions the other person is doing. And in this particular case, we want to go inside and say, ouch, how does this feel to me? So, I called you up, you said no. That felt really a lot of pain, a lot of frustration, a little bit of irritation and anger. My need in this moment is to figure out what's going on. Would you be willing to tell me what just happened? The request. Instead of needs, what we've learned to do is tell the person how they should have acted, what their behavior should have been. And it would look something like, hey, I called you up in a good mood and you got in my face and yelled at me. Nobody should be yelling at me. Or you as my best friend should not, you hear me swearing shoulds and have to's. And I'm telling him how he should have acted. Instead of just saying, you know, that really didn't meet my need for respect or consideration. But in this moment, my need is communication and understanding. I want to understand what Steve is, because I know it's not about me. So I make a request. The opposite of request is a demand. Now, again, demands and requests is a difficult concept. You don't think it is, but let me give you some examples. I'm 12 years old and I'm laying on the floor watching TV with my parents. They're in their matching recliners, watching TV. We're all watching TV, and my dad says, Jim, would you get me a cup of coffee, please? Request or demand? Request. People think so, but no, not at all. Because it has nothing to do with the tone of voice, and it has nothing to do with the words being spoken. The distinction between a request and a demand is, can you say no and not get in trouble?
Then it depends on the character of the person you're talking about.
Yes.
We don't collectively know, so it could be either.
Well, you find out if you say no and you get in trouble. So it's a really interesting thing. And really, it's helpful in relationships to understand requests and demand, but even more important in our relationships about making requests of people rather than demands. Because we learned earlier, what do you get when you make a demand? Resentment or rebellion, remember? And if my dad asked me to get him a cup of coffee, I sure as heck got up and got him that coffee because I didn't want the consequences. I wouldn't be watching television for the rest of the night. So the politeness has nothing to do with it. The words have nothing to do with it. It's can you say no and not get into trouble? That's the distinction between a request and a demand. And that's kind of an aha for most people. We walk through life thinking we're asking for something when there's strings attached. If you don't do what I ask, I'm going to feel hurt. I'm going to feel neglected. I'm going to feel... See, neglected isn't really a feeling. That's one of those, you're neglecting me, so I feel hurt, disappointed. Strings attached. So you begin to look at the distinction. So how do you deal with how do you make a clean request? You ask for what you want, and if the person says no, you do it yourself. Really pretty simple. A woman that I worked with, a client, her husband was a contractor. It's an interesting thing about being married to a contractor. It turns out when your husband's a contractor, you typically have projects going on around the house all the time, and they're always getting put off because they want to go out and earn money. So there's always a part of the house that's under repair that's not getting done. And so she was complaining about the fact that her bathroom hadn't been fixed and had been in a state of disrepair for months. So as she talked about this, how can when I ask him, he comes across as a demand, as a have to, and then he just kind of gets annoyed and doesn't do it. So how do you make a request? And I said, here's how I might suggest it. Honey, I know you're really busy, and yet I have a need for comfort in the bathroom. I have a need to be able to go in the bathroom and not have to worry about stepping on a nail and everything working. So I'd like to have you finish the bathroom in the next 2 weeks. And if you can't finish the bathroom in the next 2 weeks, that's okay. I'll just hire somebody to come in and do it. See, there's no demand there. It's like, I understand you're really busy, and if you're not able to do it, it's really okay. I'll pay for it. I'll have someone come in and we'll get it done. Because my need is my job. It's not yours. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It really begins to change relationships, however, when you begin to think in this way. It's not my partner's job to meet my needs. It may be their joy, but it's not their job. In fact, what Marshall Rosenberg, the guy who taught this, would say is that I only want you to do something for me if you can do it with the joy of the little girl feeding hungry ducks. Imagine standing on a lake shore with a little toddler, a little girl. She's got a handful of bread and she's tossing bread to the ducks, and they're coming and they're gobbling, and you can imagine her having a great time feeding the ducks. And that's the joy he talks about. Do something for me only if it gives you joy. So at the local group here in Portland, we made a business card. I've been carrying it in my wallet since 2003. And after getting requests a few times, I actually made a copy and put it in the handout. This is my business card in my wallet. And on one side it says, please do not fulfill a request of mine. If I ask for something, don't do it if you're doing it out of guilt or shame or fear or duty or obligation. Don't do it to win my affection. And don't do it because you're afraid of how I'm going to react. I don't want that energy in our relationship. Yuck. I don't want a relationship of fear or anxiety. You flip the card over and it says, only do it if you can give from the heart joyfully. If you're doing it because it meets some need of yours, maybe you need to contribute or to be supportive, or it meets some other value. That's the way I want to have a relationship. Don't buy a present for me because you think you have to. Buy a present for me if you have fun shopping and looking for something that you think I'll like. That's really, it changes the dynamic. And I made a commitment to my kids that I wasn't going to raise them in a state of fear. That I wasn't going to scare them into doing things. I was going to talk about feelings and needs. It's amazing how the dynamic changes in a relationship when it becomes safe to be who you are and to say no if you don't want to do something. Now, why would anybody say no to me? I am way too charming, right? Why would somebody say no to me?
Meet their own needs.
Because it doesn't meet their needs, exactly. And I want them to meet their needs. So I love hearing no. Because, they're taking care of themselves. They're meeting their needs. Because I don't want to ever find out later that it was done out of a sense of have to, a sense of resentment or fear. Yuck. Make sense? So, I went through this process with Steve, observed feelings, needs, requests, and Steve tells me, dude, look, it's not about you. I was at work Friday night. My boss comes over and says, that project of yours is 2 weeks overdue. You've got the weekend to get it done or you're fired. Oh, now what do I know about Steve's headspace? I told him that I was feeling hurt and annoyed and I had a need for understanding. What's Steve probably feeling?
He's trying to survive.
Yeah, so the feeling would be anxiety or fear, and the need would be
Security.
financial security. Yeah, financial security. Didn't want to lose his job. This process is called empathy. This is the definition of empathy, understanding what a person is feeling and needing. Notice that I don't have to feel Steve's anxiety. I don't have to feel his fear, but I can understand it because at some point in my life, I've had the same need and had similar feelings. So it's about understanding what he's feeling and needing. Make sense? You have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering then what is sympathy?
How I define sympathy, and this is it's just kind of an interesting debate, but how I define sympathy is feeling what Steve is feeling. If he's feeling scared and I'm also scared, then I think of that as sympathy. I'm aligning with his feeling. Whereas empathy is just understanding his feeling, but not necessarily feeling it. Okay, so, by the way, I put it in a heart because in nonviolent communication groups and in classes and workshops, we call this process the language of the heart. Or, and the more fun name is it's called giraffe language. It's called giraffe language because a giraffe is a land animal with the largest heart. The average heart for a giraffe is 26 pounds. It's a big heart. So we call
Did
this
you say land animal? I'm sorry.
land animal.
Okay.
Yes. So if you go to a nonviolent communication workshop, they'll be talking about these processes, and this style here they actually call giraffe language, and they have a giraffe puppet that's talking in the giraffe language and going through the steps. And the person who's doing it the old-fashioned way, they call this jackal. They have a jackal puppet, and they'll compare the two and have them talking to each other. In fact, they even have little headbands with jackal and giraffe ears that you can put on so that you're listening in giraffe. So it just makes it kind of silly fun as a way to learn. In Germany, they don't call it jackal, they call it wolf language, but it's always giraffe. So it's a fun way to learn, and this is actually a whole new language, a whole new way of speaking and thinking. And it takes a while. I tell people that honestly, it takes a couple of years of practice to get this mastered, because we're so used to evaluating, telling a person what we're thinking, telling them how they should act, and then making a demand. That's how most of us are raised.
Is that universal?
Yes, seems to. Well,
How did we get so screwed up?
good question. I don't think I can answer that.
Can I ask you a question?
Please.
Requests and demands
Yes.
separated by the ability to say no without
Without getting in
having a
trouble.
negative consequence.
Yep.
And scoot over a little bit. Needs and behavior. Needs would be universal, and behavior would be an action when you're trying to achieve a need.
Yes. The action.
What's the separation line between feelings and thoughts then? You know, every little one's got this little.
A feeling is an internal emotion, and a thought is an intellectual evaluation or judgment.
So thought is something I am placing on someone
Yeah,
else.
projection.
And feeling is something I'm having happen internally.
Experiencing internally, yes.
And then because I'm really trying to process, I want to ask you the same thing on the top line.
Yes.
The top line, an observation then.
It's just the facts. Without any.
And an evaluation is my interpretation.
Interpretation of it, exactly. So, Steve was on the phone talking to me, and then he hung up, probably. But if I don't know that he hung up, that's an interpretation.
That's one really hard one not to jump to that.
It takes practice.
I mean, it's almost like we've greased the skids so much. That's a subconscious response.
You make a good point. It really is a common. We assume.
And it's not even something you plan on doing.
Right. Exactly.
It's
And
almost a reflex behavior.
When I use the word assume, it's intentional because we all know about what happens with assumes, right?
That three-letter word.
Exactly. So, yes, the evaluation is our assumptions rather than facts.
Are those interconnecting links for the offer listed out in the handout?
I don't understand the question, but
but
there's actually a
request
2-page article on this little process.
Okay.
Yeah.
'Cause I need to study that theory about, can I say no without getting my head chopped off?
Yes.
Or can I recognize whether...
Well, now,
I'm
hang on a
opposing-
sec, because
I mean, talking about relationships.
you can be in integrity and say no and understand clearly that you are operating based on your needs. You can't be responsible how the other person is going to react.
Is it okay to ask, like, or is it like, because that's like pretty like
open for interpretation, and like if you make a request, or if someone makes a request of you, you have to interpret whether they are going to be comfortable with your no, or what their response is going to be to your no. So how do you discern that without actually saying no?
Well, first of all, I'm not responsible for how they're going to react. I'm responsible for me and my actions and reactions. So how I do that is I just am really clean about my part of it. If someone makes a request of me and I want to say no, interestingly, in nonviolent communication, no is a violent word because it doesn't let the person know what's happening inside of me. So how we do no is, when you ask me to go dancing with you, I feel scared and uncomfortable and a little annoyed because I've told you that I don't like dancing. I have a need for space. I have a need for respect for my feelings about dancing. Would you be willing to go by yourself or find someone to go with? So I'm saying no, but I'm saying it while at the same time I'm telling them what's happening inside of me, how I'm feeling about the request and what my need is.
You also didn't make a clean-cut no. You were asking how they, if they could find a different way to meet their dancing need.
I am saying a clear-cut no.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm being really, but I'm just not using the word. I'm saying, you could even say, when you ask me to go to the movie, I'm not willing to go to that particular kind of movie. I hate those kinds of movies. If I go to a movie, it needs to be a lot more relaxing, a lot more comfortable, and I want to walk out feeling fun. So we could either go to a different kind of movie, or you could find someone else to go. I've actually had that almost exact conversation in my relationship because
Is that compromising then?
it's not at all. No, it's negotiating. In fact, in the case of a movie, sometimes I'll go to a chick flick, and then my wife will go to an action movie as a way of sharing, doing it together. But there are times when one or the other will just say, I'm not comfortable.
Oh, my husband's like, you want to come with me?
Right.
I'm going anyway, you can come with me.
That's the beauty. Yeah, exactly. And that's where you have permission to say no. My wife, I've taken her to several concerts. She loves a cappella, she loves choir and choral and things like that. And I've been to probably 4 or 5. And then she says, let's buy season tickets. And I'm saying, not no, hell no, internally. But I'm saying, I don't think I'm comfortable doing that. Because I don't enjoy that. Why don't you find somebody else to go with? Tell you what I'll do. I'll even buy a pair of tickets, season tickets. I'll pay for it. You find somebody that likes the stuff and you go with them. I'm respecting her need for culture and diversity and all of that stuff. And I'm also saying, nah, not for me. That's integrous. That's being true to our needs. If I were to say to myself, I really should go with her because I have an obligation as a partner to support her. So I go to this piano concerto or whatever, and I'm sitting there in the theater with her looking at my watch, wondering if it stopped because it's just moving really slow. The little light comes on, and then I pull out my phone figuring I'll check my email or play a game, and she nudges me because the light comes on. I have to put my phone away. I'm clearly not enjoying myself. Is she enjoying herself? No, probably not, because I'm fidgeting and I'm restless and I'm uncomfortable. She's probably not enjoying herself. In fact, the people sitting around us are probably not enjoying themselves because I'm fidgety and the light's coming on and I'm whispering. When you go against your needs, everybody suffers. Because there's going to be some kind of passive-aggressive resentment, discomfort, unhappiness. So it really becomes the art of paying attention to your needs and being able to communicate them in a way that's not about the other person. When you ask me to go to a concert, I love the fact that you're thinking about getting season tickets because you will save money and you can do it on a regular basis, but it also feels really uncomfortable for me because I don't like that stuff. I think I have a need I honor your need for culture and I have a need for some space. So the request I'd make is, how about if I buy tickets for you and a friend? She actually did that. She went out, found a friend that she hadn't seen very often. Now they get together every other month. They go to dinner, they go to a concert, they stop by for dessert and tea afterwards. They have a fun night out. And I get to do what I want. That is truly a win-win situation.
But what is compromising then? Is that what you do with your child? Oh, if you do this, then we do. I don't understand compromising then.
So, my understanding of compromise is that there are 2 donuts and I want 2 donuts, but I'll give you one. To me, compromise has a little bit of a pinch to it. I'm going to give up something so that you can have something.
Okay.
That's how I understand compromise. I don't claim to be an expert at it, but that's how I think of compromise, is giving up something so that both people feel a little bit of a pinch. Whereas...
so both of them get something out of it. Like, I get 1 donut instead of 2, and I make them happy because I give them 1.
Yeah,
so
that would be a compromise. Yeah.
Okay.
And is negotiation better than compromise then?
I don't do worse, better, good, bad. I don't like that kind of evaluation. But internally, what I do is, does it feel better to you to, be integrous about what meets your needs and what doesn't meet your needs?
If you have that ability to somehow build a healthy boundary, then it gives you a better barometer of whether or not you're compromising or whether or not you're creating that resentment.
Yeah, exactly, because you don't want that resentment coming in. Exactly.
You can compromise to the point of resentment.
Right.
Okay.
And then you're no longer honoring your needs. Beautiful.
You're not authentic.
Yep. Okay, final exam. I've gone through my process, told Steve how I'm feeling, what I'm needing. Steve tells me that he's terrified of losing his job. What's the very next thing to do from my part, from my side? And I want to tell you, be careful, I want to tell you that this is a trick question.
Say the question again.
He's just told me what he's feeling and needing, that he's terrified of losing his job. What's the very next thing I should do? Yeah, think about it for a minute. Some people are going to say, well, I should help Steve. Did you catch the swear word?
Think about
I should help Steve.
How do you want to?
There, that's closer.
You feel good.
So the first thing you do is, and it's a trick question because people think, what's my next behavior? But before you do a behavior, you have to check in, what's my need? Right now, what's my need? If my need is supporting Steve, I'll say, dude, how about if I come over and help you with your project? But in this instance, my need was play. I wanted to go to the movie. And if I should on myself, there's a danger that I'm going to be resentful. So I say, dude, that sounds really horrible. I'll check in with you tomorrow. I hang up, and then I call somebody to go play with, somebody else to go play with, because I'm honoring my need. If I have the belief that it's my duty as a friend, I have to help Steve. So I go out and I buy a couple of pizzas, and I buy a couple of 6-packs of Coke, and I go over to his house, and I get there, and Steve's sitting watching football. Already the resentment is coming out because I've given up my movie, and he's not working on his project. He should be working on his project.
That's why he's 2 weeks behind.
It could be. Or it could be that he'd been working his butt off for 2, 3, 4 hours and he's just taking a break. The point is, my resentment is because I should on myself. I set up an artificial have to instead of honoring my needs. So people can do this to you, or you can do it to yourself if you don't pay attention to what your needs are in each moment. Now, as you can probably get, this is kind of transformative for the brain. The brain is kind of going fritzing out right now because it's nothing like we've ever understood or heard. But my experience with most groups that I introduce this to is, wow, this kind of makes sense. And this is the kind of way I want to have relationships, where it's give mutually, not take, not demand. That when somebody gives you something, you know that is integrous. They're doing it because they had fun doing it. They're doing it out of joy, not out of a sense of have to. And with that have to coming a little bit of grumbly, resentment, attitude.
You wouldn't mind refreshing me, what's the name of the two storms? That behavioral storm, a feeding storm?
Behavioral, I call it a behavioral storm, yeah. Because what it is it's emotions internally that's triggered by thinking Steve's behaviors about me.
And this works in relationships that are not intimate?
Oh, yeah.
Does it work in relationships that are just professional?
In fact, it was really fairly, I came out of a 10-day training. I went to a 2-hour training, really liked it. So that weekend I did an all-day Saturday training. 2 months later, I did a 10-day intensive, and I came back just excited and pumped and could already begin to figure out how I was going to do it in work, and I tried it at home, and the poop hit the fan. I mean, because my wife said something about, I'm feeling that that's not respectful. And instead of listening and being empathetic, I went to, well, that isn't really a feeling. Respectful isn't a feeling, it's a thought. And then it even got worse. It got ugly. Because I tried to educate her rather than being empathetic. And so it's actually easier to do it with friends and at work than it is to do in your personal relationships. It takes more practice. In fact, I used to have a 4-hour presentation with PowerPoints and the whole bit. And my very last PowerPoint, tongue-in-cheek, said, don't try this at home. And then I would explain how I tried it at home and got my head bit off because I didn't empathize. I skipped a step.
You want to try on like the outer circle friends, and then once you get better at it, then you can get to the closer the circle.
That tends to be, that tends to be the best way to learn how to do it. Okay. And in fact, we have in all over the world, but here in Portland, we have these 10-week groups you can go to where you're with a group of strangers, and you're practicing on each other. And you can bring something from your work environment or your home environment and role play it. Somebody plays your boss, and you tell them, the kind of script, kind of words that your boss would normally say, and then you practice putting on your giraffe ears and not hearing it as a demand, but hearing it as a request. Yeah.
What's that called? You said there's a group info?
Well, yeah. The names of the groups will vary. orncc.net is the website. And they have 2-day weekend groups, and they have 10-week groups and 12-week groups, fairly inexpensive. I've got several friends that do this. In fact, on the handout, I've got 3 different websites of people that are doing relationship counseling and teaching this model. So there's also on the handout 2 books. One is the book where this comes from, NonViolent Communication, by Marshall Rosenberg, and then the other one is actually a workbook. Taking each chapter in this book and having a workbook with assignments and exercises. One of the women who runs the 12-week group actually uses the workbook, encourages everybody to buy the workbook, and then they walk through the workbook, and each week they practice another step. So you'll spend a whole week reading and practicing how the distinction between observing and evaluating. And then you'll do a couple of weeks on feelings and thoughts, and on needs and behavior, on requests and demands. There's even a group on how do you express gratitude using this model. Because it's really fun to say thank you to someone using this model. Because instead of just saying, someone comes up and says, that was a really great group. I don't have any information. I don't know what I'm going to do to continue making it a great group. But if they come up to me and say, when you talked about the connection between partners, I felt really clear and excited because it made my need for understanding. And you use stories which help me to make sense of it. So now I've got some data, more stories, more visual pictures. So you can actually use this model to do gratitude, and you can also do it for grieving. When you say that you were scared because I came home an hour late, I'm really sad. I don't want you to feel scared. My need is for you to feel safe and heard. And so please let me know, or even call me if you start to worry. I'm using the same model in communicating. my sadness that I scared my partner because I came home late.
Would that also work on kids not coming home at curfew time?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, one last little video, and then I'm done with you. This one is kind of fun. In that, what I like to say about this video is that if you like videos, it's really sweet. It's one of the first videos that I ever found. And if you don't like videos, it's really short, like 2.5 minutes.
Kid, every time I'm pulling out, he's right there. Man, someone needs to talk to his parents, if they're ever at home. What is up with the traffic today? It's always, every day, this intersection's always crowded. I hate pulling out of here. I need some of these dumb roads. Oh, there's... Okay, so I'm not even here. Right. Great lady. The princess of parking. Oh, sure. Take the spot. Way to be considerate. Oh, you kidding me? Unbelievable. Oh.
Thank you, ma'am. Have a great day.
It's about time. Let's see, what do I want? Yeah, could I add a cookie to that order?
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, no problem, only guy in the world. I'm sure you need your cookie. The world, your oyster, and he's serving your cookie.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you so much.
What can I get for you?
Yeah, I'll have a tall decaf macchiato.
Yeah, sure, no problem. $3.85. And it might take a few minutes here. We've got quite a line, obviously, and thanks for your patience.
Great. Yeah, great. Great for me. Winning again. Unbelievable. What? What is... What is that? What in the world? Oh, what? What am I supposed to do? How can I do anything about that? Can I even help with that? I don't.
Your coffee, sir.
Oh. I can't take this anymore. I gotta get out of here.
Hey, watch it.
Sorry, so sorry.
Hey, buddy, come here.
Everybody he looked at had something going on. It was never about him, it was about their needs. And that's the beauty of this process is it kind of gives you those glasses. You begin to become curious. I wonder what's going on for that person. They're not doing it to me. It's not about me. That's the ego. Any questions, thoughts?